president on Friday, this is really sad news. President Obama signed into law a bill that prevents states from adding clear, easy-to-read GMO labels to food packages. This is the press release from foodconsumer.org. Known as the Deny Americans the Right to Know Act, the DARK Act, the bill was supported by Senators Pat Roberts and Debbie Stabenow, Republican from Kansas and Democrat from Michigan. The large biotech company Monsanto and the Grocery Manufacturers Association, a trade group for big food. This is so sad. I think it's worth remembering, too, that Debbie Stabenow, along with Joe Biden, were major Democratic pushers of the 2005 Bankruptcy Reform Act that made it impossible for people with student loans to repudiate their student debt in bankruptcy court. And I wish these people would answer for this. But, you know, it probably isn't going to happen. We do not have a media in this country that holds politicians accountable for their... Hell, we don't have a media in this country that even talked about the DARK Act. In fact, I would like to start a competition. Louise and I watched, you know, we hung around our where we live, hung around our boat all weekend, pretty much. I mean, took the dog for a couple of walks, and that was about it. And, you know, read and watched TV and just kind of took the weekend off. I mean, sort of. I probably spent 6 or 8 hours pulling together content for today's program and throughout the week, and for some writing that I'm doing. But we probably watched in aggregate on both days, and, you know, some of it was like doing other things, making lunch, making dinner, you know, sitting around, whatever. But we probably watched 6 hours of television this weekend. Virtually all of it MSNBC and CNN. And the only time I saw any issues discussed, actual issues, was when MSNBC cut to a Hillary Clinton event in wherever she was, Pennsylvania or Ohio. They're on this bus tour, her and Tim Kaine. And she was talking about the need to raise taxes on rich people. That's an issue. It's an issue that is legitimately worthy of debate. Should we go back to the Eisenhower levels of taxation on rich people, 91%? Should we go back to Reagan's first tax cut? Well, actually, should we go back to the levels that Lyndon Johnson dropped them to in 1964? He dropped that 91% down to 74%. And things were working pretty well throughout the 70s, as 60s and 70s as a result of that. You didn't see this explosion of wealth at the top at 74%. See, my opinion is anything over 50% works. It serves as a deterrent to sucking all the money out of your company instead of paying your employees well. But what can you know, so, and then, you know, there are people who suggest that the 35% or 39% is the right rate, 46%. You know, what's the right top tax rate? I think, you know, starting at 51% or 56% or even 50% would be a good idea. Now, keep in mind, if you're earning $1 million a year, you're not paying 50% income tax on the first $10,000 you earn. You pay nothing on that. On the next $10,000, you pay what, 3 or 4%, 5%? I mean, you know, it's a progressive tax rate. So the tax rate goes up as the income goes up. But in any case, my competition. We literally, the whole weekend, we kept saying to each other, are they going to discuss an issue? Right? TV show would come on, the news would come on. Are they going to discuss an issue? Are they going to talk about the actual issue of trade, or are they simply going to mention, you know, Trump's statement on trade or something? Are they going to discuss the TPP, the actual issue? Are they going to discuss infrastructure, the actual issue? Are they going to discuss the minimum wage, the actual issue? Are they going to discuss the right to unionize and card check, the actual issue? For those of you who are under 40 years old, when I was a kid growing up back in the 60s and 70s before Reagan, the media actually debated these issues every night. We had a strong and vibrant debate about issues in America until Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Act, and then the Telecommunications Act of the 96 made it far worse. And we saw this massive accumulation of all the media in the United States being owned by a half a dozen companies. Huffington Post is now owned by Verizon, MSNBC by Comcast. You know, you're going to hear a discussion about net neutrality? I don't think so. So anyhow, my contest is, if you hear an actual issue being debated and discussed on a national television program, the only place where I saw any of them, by the way, was Fareed Zakaria's program, GPS, on Sunday morning. If you hear an issue, call in and share it with us, and you might win a book.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.